Hi, it's Andrew here from Veggie Patch in Perth, and this is the first of a two-part clip on the construction of my beloved wood-fired pizza oven. This was made probably a couple of years ago now, in the winter. And if you've ever thought of constructing a pizza oven or a wood-fired oven, I highly suggest you do, and hopefully watching this will change your mind and you'll give it a go. So we'll get straight into it. So this is the first clip here, is just of my little rough drawing of what I planned to do. It did change in the end, and I'll point that out shortly, but you can see here, I had the dimensions of the masonry blocks which constructs the hearth, or the bottom part of the oven, and then I also had my dimensions of the exact dimensions of the fire bricks. So from that I could then calculate how many blocks and bricks I needed depending on what I wanted to build. So very important, so yeah, you don't have too much or not enough of your blocks, because there's nothing worse than getting halfway through a project and running out. Next up is choosing the site, so that's very important as well. You want it reasonably close to your house, but then again, some people don't want it too close to their house, and you also have to think of your neighbours because of the smoke. So choosing the site is very important, which I guess putting it somewhere where it's very accessible is very important too. So although this doesn't look accessible, it will be very shortly. This is where I used to have the kids' swing set and my old pot collection and a few rain tanks and bits and pieces, but it didn't take me long to clear that all out the way and find a new home for that. And as you can see, it was all nicely cleared away pretty quick, smart. Next up is getting everything dead level. So you need to calculate how thick your pad's going to be, and if you want it to be flush with your lawn, obviously you need to calculate how exactly how thick your pad's going to be and what your dimensions are going to be for your pad based on your oven. It doesn't matter if one side's slightly higher like I've got here, because I know that the pad will come up pretty close to where that high corner is, and yeah, it shouldn't be a problem at all. Now, this is just showing I was pretty proud of myself that I got it all nice and level. Next up was ordering all the blocks, and then there's Tyler here, very happy to see the blocks turn up, ready for a bit of construction. And then next up was laying them out. So this is laying out the design, and this is at the point where I decided that I changed my mind. I'd keep the pad the same size, but I ended up changing my mind and not having these little winglets, little wing parts off to the side. The main reason was that when I double stacked it over, trying to get the pattern right so that everything overlapped, I just couldn't get it to work. So I took the easy option and just took the wings off the side, and then it made life a heck of a lot easier. So then here we go, we've laid out our framework, and you can see it's pegged on the side of the framework. That's to stop from the weighted cement bowing the framework out. And then we've also lined that with plastic, and we have our spaces there so that the rebar, which you can see there, sits in the middle of our pour. So I didn't actually take any photos of doing the actual pour. I did that, it's the first time I've laid a cement slab, and I did it not by truck, it was all done by hands with a cement mixer. So I was very nervous and forgot to take any photos of that, but as you can see here, it turned out just fine. And this here is showing just the thickness of the slab. Make sure you do a nice thick slab, because it's going to be holding a heck of a lot of weight on top of it. Then I've just done a few snap lines here, chalk lines, just so I can mark out the exact center point, so I get everything nice and square and plumb in the middle. Then we're on to construction. So the next part here, you can see these masonry blocks, they're all free stacked. So they are not cemented in, they are all free stacked. What I have done, which you'll see in the next shot, is the cores are filled with cement. So you need to get these absolutely dead flush, nice and level, so they're sitting perfect. Then you can do it this way. You fill each core, you put a piece of rebar in every second core, and then totally fill that with cement. And then every alternate core, what you can do is I stuffed them with all the old paper cement bags, and then I just topped it off with cement just to save on costs there. So little tip there, just to save the amount of cement, you only need to fill every second core. And then I've also, you can see there, started to build a frame which will sit just on the outside, which will be for the next cement pour, which will be for the main floor of the oven, but we'll get to that in a minute. This is just showing that I had to recess in a little bit here, and you can also see in this photo I just had to cut out these blocks a little bit for this support bar that had to sit in there. And then here we go, you can see the floor. This is ready for the second pad, so we've got the frame around the outside, and that is all supported, and then I've got the plywood in the middle there, which is sitting flush with the blocks, and then I've got my rebar and the spacers around the outside again. And then you got to make sure you support under your oven as well. So we've got the wood here to try and keep it as flat as possible, and it's not one piece all the way to the floor. You can see it's chocked with little shims. That's just so when it comes to getting these bits out, it's a bit easier. You can just knock out the shim, and then that plywood board will fall down, and yeah, just makes life a little bit easier. Here you can see this is showing the amount of cement that I calculated I needed for the pad, and I calculated almost exactly. I think I had to do a quick rundown to get 2 more bags in the end. This is the first batch being mixed, getting the mix right, and it didn't take me long to get that mix right. I was pretty confident at making concrete by this point after doing the bottom pad. And then here you can see halfway through doing the pour, and it also gives you a good shot of the support on the outside there. Same deal, got shims on the outside, and then it's bolted on that left side. You can just see it there, with some supports as well to stop it bowing out, and it worked really well. Got the pad really nice and smooth and even. This is just showing me floating it just at the end there, just to get that nice finish on it, even though it gets pretty much all, well, it does get completely covered up. I guess I must be a bit of a perfectionist. And by this time, and you can see it's really late in the afternoon now, so it's been all day and the pad's finally finished, and I'm happy with it, and it's time to go to bed and wait for the next day. I think this is the following afternoon. You can see I was just showing off that everything's still nice and plumb and level. And then now comes the fun part. So this is a pretty risky moment. This is, if you've never constructed anything like this, which I never have, you got to put faith in your construction, and this is knocking out the wood shims underneath, and trusting that you've done everything right, because yeah, there's a lot of weight above you, and if that collapses, it's not going to be pretty. But it all worked, and this is just showing the plywoods come down, and I had to saw the plywood in half to get it out of the oven entrance. And then this is starting to mark out the main pad for construction. So internal, You can see here's 36 inches and the external is going to be 42. And once again, I've done snap lines on here so I can get the center line for where to start construction and where to mark out this arch. And probably shouldn't have been drinking Coronas on this day. This was very complicated maths doing the entrance, but it turned out alright, and it did end up dead center, so I mustn't have had too many on that day. You can see here lots and lots of lines marked out on here. Just checking, double check. It's always better to double check, triple check, get it right. Now we start construction. This is the fibre cement board, and I definitely would suggest buy the thickest insulation that you can afford, because even though it's expensive, it pays off in the long run, because the more insulation you apply to your oven, the more heat it will hold. Well, the longer it will hold heat, which means equals less wood burned. So I definitely suggest buying the thickest insulation and the thickest bricks and tiles that you can afford. But this is nasty stuff. Yeah, you don't want to be inhaling this, so hence why I'm wearing the mask. And then here is my tiles. You can see they're quite thick once again, so that then they retain the heat. And you can see the center line marked out on that center tile, just so I can get it all center. And this is just showing them both laid out on the lawn there. Next up, we've got the fibre cement down. Then we've got the tiles laid out on top of the fibre cement. And then I've finally started construction. So you can see I've got my wooden arch constructed here, and if you can see on the marks there, I've tried to allow for the cement. So yeah, you've got to keep that in mind. But yeah, this is the first bricks actually laid for this is for the door, or the inner arch, sorry. Then I turned my attention to finishing the inside and the outside of the hearth. This I thought I'd have a crack at doing the rendering on the inside first, because I've never done rendering before. So I thought if anything was to go wrong, or I couldn't get the right consistency, I could play with it on the inside and no one will see it. So by the time I'd finished doing the inside, I was pretty confident that I could get a good consistency and yeah, get it nice and smooth and be able to do the outside. Well, reasonably smooth. And then as you can see here, then I've moved to the outside of the oven and done coat of render on there. Made my way all the way around. Then here now I've done the primer. You can do this after, but I got a bit excited, and you can do this after you can construct the oven, but I got a bit excited and wanted to finish off the bottom part so I could show off to the missus what it looked like. So done the primer, and then here you can see that's the final colour I decided on for the outside. Now the attention turns to the construction of the inside. So you can see here those 3 blocks which were for the inner door. You see, I've had to cut them so that they fit the round of the oven, and then the first 2 bricks standing up there for the first layer around on the inside. You can see them. I've just stuck those on there. Now this here is for the landing, so this will be tiled, so you don't, and because it doesn't get much heat on the landing, I've just used normal bricks, because it won't matter, because they'll get covered with tile and you won't see it. You'll see that in the end when it's all finished. And this here is just showing off that everything's nice and level. Got the the tiles level, and I've also got the bricks for the landing level. Well, I think I'll end part 1 here. Hopefully I'm inspiring some people to build a pizza oven, or yeah, at least have a crack. And I'll see you soon anyway for part number 2.